All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me today, we've got the reigning defending champion of the Challenge All Stars, MJ Garrett. What's going on, man?
What's up, Mike Lewis? I'm happy to be here, brother. Heard a lot of good things about you.
Hey, well, I'm finally nice to meet you. I mean, I've been wanting to get you on for a little bit now, so I'm glad we could finally knock this thing out. How are you feeling about this whole process?
Man, it's been awesome. It's been great kind of getting back into this world again. Like I've told a lot of people and a lot of the media outlets, is I had kind of packed up this whole reality TV, real world challenge stuff and stuffed it up underneath the bed like Mel Gibson in The Patriot, putting his tomahawk and all of this stuff underneath. And then the next thing you know, I see that Mark was putting together All Stars 1, and it kind of piqued some interest, but wasn't quite ready to do that one. And then whenever they called me again about All Stars 2, I said, dude, let's rock and roll. And the rest has been history. Came back, did even better than I thought I was going to do on it. And
Really?
yeah. And we're about to roll again. We're about a week away from
Six
the
days,
premiere of
yeah.
All Stars 3. Yeah.
If I would have told you about a year and a half ago that in the next year you would be MJ Garrett defending All Stars champ in the year 2022, how weird would that have sounded?
Dude, it would have been the most taboo sounding thing ever, because that's literally, like I was saying, Mike, it was so far off of my radar. But it's just crazy how life works, man. You know, I've always, I love the experiences that I had back in my mid 20s. It was such a huge part of my life. And at that time, I probably took it for granted more than I do now. That's what I found to be the biggest difference. Whenever you're getting to go to these amazing locations, like when we were in Mexico, kind of in the Tulum, Cancun area, and living in this big, beautiful house, and then in Panama, which everybody will see here in about a week, just how freaking amazing this location is. Back in the day, I didn't. It was just kind of like, I'm here, we're partying, we're doing it. I didn't soak in the experience. You know, whenever you get to be my age, I mean, I turned 42 this month, bro. You start looking at all of, like, you know, I'm looking at the details inside these mansions. I'm like, man, that's some nice crown molding, bro. you know, it's totally different, but I love it.
I liked how you pointed out about like the change of experience because and taking it for granted because when I think of like your real world season, like you had to have been coming off this thing like, all right, this guy's like the man, right? You're going on like all these experiences, and it's like that's everybody goes through it. I feel like when they come off the real world, it's like the running of the bulls. I like to call it. Everybody's kind of
Yeah.
like I know a popular thing to do is everybody would jump into the LA scene and try to pursue like the whole like acting and modeling things going on at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And then after a while, I believe you did Gauntlet 2, right? And then
Yeah.
after that was kind of like more of like a sporadic appearance type of thing where they kind of had you on the wait list and then you were kind of like an animal in his cage a little bit. Whereas now you're like on both shows, there's no more of the replacement thing going on for you. So it's definitely been a wavelength change, I would say, for you.
It has been. I had a really weird experience even getting on this show, and I can kind of walk you through that if you want to hear
Yeah, go
about it.
ahead.
But so, you're talking about the LA stuff. I was born and raised here in Nashville, Tennessee. People probably see me wear this
Oh,
Tennessee
yeah.
hat all the time, but I'm very, very proud of Tennessee and my roots. But I grew up here in Nashville, still live in Nashville, and had the opportunity to play college football at a place called Vanderbilt University, which is in the SEC and is
Yeah.
here smack dab in the middle of Nashville, Tennessee, and had a good career. I started for 3 years. I'm sure you've heard of Jay Cutler. He
Jake
was my
Cutler.
quarterback. Yeah, he was my quarterback my senior year to kind of date me and when I played. But NFL didn't work out for me, Mike. And whenever I wasn't able to, I kind of lost my identity whenever I was no longer a college football player. I had this great education from a top 25 school, but I didn't know what to do with it. Like I was a football player. So I had a buddy who was living out in LA in the Santa Monica area, and he said, "Dude, just come out here, get away from Nashville," which is all I wanted to do. I just needed a change of scenery. And he said, "You can come out." I got a futon in my studio apartment. and you can sleep on that, and we'll just figure it out from there. So, dude, I headed west, and I had no plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't really trying to even get into acting or modeling or anything like that. I just wanted to escape. And Mike, I kid you not, I was there 2 weeks. I was doing nothing but going out and partying at night. I was not even seeing the light of day, really. We were farting on his futon, playing video games all day. And then I was laying my head and sleeping on that same futon that we were farting on. But, dude, I went out one night and I ran into somebody that I knew from Vanderbilt and had no idea that she even lived out there. She started kind of introducing me to people. And I was that guy at the time where I was just telling everybody my sob story, like, oh man, I should be totally making millions in the NFL, but yada, yada, yada. Well, this one dude that I was introduced to just happened to be a casting director for Benjamin Murray, the production company that does the Real World.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know it, Mike, whenever I was talking to him. And make a very long story short, the next day I wake up to a telephone call from the girl saying, hey, did you remember meeting so-and-so last night? Like, yeah, it's kind of. Did I embarrass you? I'm so sorry. She goes, no, I think that they're interested in you coming in and talking to them about a show called The Real World. I went, what? The Real World? That show's dumb. Literally, that's the first thing that came out of my mouth.
Wow.
That show's kind of dumb. Because it was always on, because back in the day, it was just reruns nonstop on MTV. And I watched it some, but I wasn't like an avid fan. So I didn't know that much about it. But I decided to go in a few days later, sat down with them for one interview, had no idea what I was doing, had never been on camera like that before, other than doing local sports, interviews and stuff like that. And next thing I know, they bring me in for another one. And after it only took about maybe a month, I said, how'd you like to go live with 6 other people in Philadelphia?
So it was like a fast-tracked process, you would say.
It was so fast. And, I don't know all of the back end stuff, but I pretty much think that they already had all the other 6 people, and they were still trying to fill that 7th spot. And I was very, very fortunate, and it's changed my life forever, in good ways, in bad ways, it's kind of been that whole double-edged sword,
Yeah. Yeah, for the folks that don't really remember, you were like the original athlete coming off the show. I mean, people might their memories might get clouded a little bit due to like some of the younger kids on the flagship coming up and talking about their athletic prowess. But you, sir, you had quite the impressive resume coming from Vandy, of course, and you mentioned about the NFL thing not working out. Did you go on like any of those like mini camps or any of that stuff?
Man, so it's a very long story, but I'll just make it very, very short. The quick answer is no, but the long answer is I was invited and was gearing up to go, and then ended up getting it yanked out from up underneath me, man. So there's more to that story, but I'm just going with no.
But it was never explained to you, right? Like why it got yanked from you?
Well, the Indianapolis Colts were the team that I was really supposed to be going with,
Oh.
and even did the travel there and everything, and it just didn't work out. So, yeah, it's still to this day I have some regrets a little bit. I played wide receiver in college, and my freshman year they had kind of given me the opportunity, or asked me if I would be interested in playing tight end, and but I would have had to have redshirted and gained about 30 or 40 pounds. And I didn't want to. I wanted to keep the 6-pack abs and come in and try to play out the gate, which, again, had a good career. But I think if I could have packed on some more pounds, I might have had a better shot at playing in the next level.
Yeah, I mean, the only silver lining there is had you gone to the Colts, I think you might have got run out of Tennessee.
Right?
Colts and Titans, man. Oh, man.
Right? You're right. But man, it was pretty cool though, Mike, because after I got off the original show, I thought I was just gonna come back home, possibly to Nashville, or maybe still be in LA, and my buddies and I would watch the show and kind of laugh, and it would be this little thing. And then all of a sudden it just turned into a much bigger opportunity,
Yeah.
Back in the day, we were talking about it earlier, we used to go around the country and do public speaking at colleges and universities all across America. We were paid to just appear at clubs. Back before people were doing promotions on social media, they were doing old school advertising on the freaking radio and putting signs up in all of these little small hole in the wall towns. That you're having MJ from the real world and Cameron from real world San Diego.
San
We did
Diego, yeah.
we did so many appearances together, and we were plastered all across America. And we just traveled nonstop. And I did that for almost probably 3.5 to 4 years.
Wow.
Lost a lot of years on my life during that 3 to 4 years too.
Yeah, when I was talking to Brad and I had him on, he was saying he was hitting like 20 cities a month.
Yeah.
Is that what you were doing before your first challenge?
Yeah. And it was, I turned down the first challenge that I was offered. Was the first one that Landon did and won. He did the Inferno 2. One of those Inferno 2s. And they wanted me to do that. I even think Karamo came in for a little while and was on that Inferno 2. And because that was the one right after our season stopped airing. And I turned it down because I was so busy traveling the country. And in my mind, I was like, well, the better business decision is to go ahead and make as much money as I can doing these appearances while it's hot. And then I know that they'll ask me to come back and do more. I don't think Benjamin Murray was too happy about it, but
Yeah, I talked to like a lot of people when they come off and like the appearances stop. They said like after a while, like they have this feeling of, oh, this is really cool because I'm getting paid to be here and the fans are recognizing me. But after a while, it kind of sets in, and then you're like feeling a little bit of an empty feeling about doing these appearances. Did that happen to you at all?
Dude, so you hear about these? I gotta take that hat off, man. You hear about these rock stars getting up on stage, and they'll be in Detroit, Michigan, but they'll get up on stage and be like, "Hey, Boston!" Like, yell out the total wrong name of the city that they're in, and you'd be like, "How could somebody do that? How messed up are they?" But man, that kind of stuff happened. Like, I would wake up in some cities and be like, "Where in the hell am I at right now?" Because it was just night after night after night after night, and all the booze was paid for. And it's just, you had to be on, like you were just nonstop having all these conversations, and it just all turned into this big blur. And you told the same story over and over and over. So in a lot of ways, number one, you weren't healthy physically or mentally whenever you're doing it. And then number two, when you start telling the same story over and over and over, it kind of loses its
luster
a little bit. But that's why it's so cool now, coming back on, Mike, almost 18 years later,
18 years later,
not more, 20, and talking to you, and these stories feel fresh again. It's like I'm not really reliving the glory days, but it's kind of like, oh, I remember that, and the story's probably a little bit different now than it was back then.
Would you say that you stepping away from the social media and like the spotlight of the show for the while that you did, was that like an organic process, or was that a conscious effort made on your end?
That's a great question, Mike. I think it was a mix of both. Truly, I was, Facebook, or it was MySpace was the big thing that started coming out back in the day, and I remember seeing somebody. I think it was Brad. Brad was doing a great job.
Oh, he was a killer on that one, he said.
Yeah, man, and was they were running promotions through that, and I just never. Dude, this is going to sound stupid now, but I was like, man, this is never going to take off. This is dumb. This Twitter stuff's dumb. Who cares? Who cares what I have to say? Like, I was that person. So I just never jumped on board. So that's the ignorance part on my end, or just not knowing what it was going to be. But then also, man, I was one of the first ones to start up a family. And, I had that's one of the things that slowed me down the most as far as the career. I shouldn't say slowed me down, but made me have to make some life decisions, was whenever we had our first daughter, Bella. I was 26 when we had her, and just that lifestyle was not very conducive to being the type of father that I wanted to be, and trying to have a more, if you want to say, consistent living and consistent paycheck coming in instead of
Yeah.
just worrying about who the next bar owner was that was going to call me. So that kind of like got me out of that world a little bit, and I focused more on the public speaking more than anything, and I love doing that. So I kept doing that, and even took that into corporate America with myself, and use that as a skill for some of the companies that I worked for, and would go around and speak on their behalf. Some of these companies. So that was a long answer to your question, but yeah, it was both conscious and ignorance of why I kind of got away from it.
Did the reality stuff ever come up when going into companies? Because that's like a big focus I talk about with my guests. They say like, after reality stuff gets done, and then when they're going to their like companies or jobs, it's like a conversation that ends up coming up. Did that happen for you?
Constantly, still does.
Wow.
And again, it goes back to like that double-edged sword. Like it can be a great thing, especially if you're in sales, because it can help you get past the gatekeeper. People recognize you, especially with me being a freaking 6'3" dude with this crazy ass blonde curly hair. It kind of just sticks out a little bit.
Yeah.
And it helped me early in my career get past whoever was there kind of at the front desk of what we would call a gatekeeper to get back to the true decision makers. But here's the flip side of that. You could use that to get in the door, but then once you actually got in front, or once you get in front of the decision makers, you have to make sure that they know that you're not just a gimmick, that you're not somebody who's just the TV personality, the wild person. And a lot of times they just view you as that and won't take you as seriously. And the same is true for a lot of professions. That's why a lot of the folks have a hard time breaking into entertainment and like more professional forms of entertainment after this, because you just get stereotyped as that reality star, and they don't think that you really have skill. But there's so many people that you're seeing now that truly do have talent, but reality was just their way in the door, and I'm so glad to see that the door is opening up for more and more people, even Karamo, like seeing the success that he's had for my season, like, dude, it's mind blowing to me that he's been able to transition and go into, a few little hosting jobs, to career out for the straight guy, to, I saw him the other day in the Nashville airport.
I was going to ask about that after this.
Dude, mind blowing, but he's about to have his own freaking daytime talk show. It's insane, bro.
I feel like coming off your season too, if you would have asked anybody, like, who's going to be like the person that's getting the talk show, everybody would have been like, you or Landon first, right? Like, they're like, these guys are going to be the ones that are social media heavy. They're going to be in front of this, TV for 20 years. But Karamo is the one guy that's like consistently just stayed in front of the cameras for this entire duration.
Dude, and it's been amazing to see what he's done. And it's we kind of have a unique, or had a very unique relationship when we were on the show. We weren't that close at all. There was definitely some tension there. No tension because of what they probably wanted tension for, but we just really didn't jive that well. And dude, we had not seen each other
since the
show in 18 years. And then not even a month ago, I'm in the Nashville airport about to fly out to Peru, where I'm going on this like crazy spiritual journey all by myself to go sit with ayahuasca, Mother Aya, in middle of nowhere, Peru. And all of a sudden, Karamo reaches out to me through Instagram because he saw a little post that I did, and goes, "Hey man, I'm in the Nashville airport. What gate are you at?" "Well, I'm at C18. He goes, "What the fuck? I'm at C19. So he was literally at the gate right next to me. They had already boarded, but we got delayed because the weather was real bad here. So he got off the plane, and we reconnected right there in the Nashville airport. And he just happened to be here because of the CMT Awards. He was hosting or presenting an award or something like that. And dude, it's just amazing to reconnect with him and see everything that he's doing.
Did all the memories start to flood back from
They did.
Really?
They did. They truly did. And it was, I was honored to be a part of him coming out. I mean, that's really what happened. Like
Seeing what?
when we first got in the house, nobody knew that he was gay, at all. And then it was probably, I don't know if it was a week or 2 weeks had gone by, and then there was that classic scene where Landon and I are next to Karamo, and we're about to go out, and then everybody was going to a gay club, and Landon and I were like, well, we've never really been to a gay club before. We'll go. Karamo, have you ever been? He's like, yeah. What? And it was kind of like, whenever I went.
Yeah, your jaw dropped for about 15 minutes.
But it was awesome, man. And that's one of those classic moments, I think, in reality history where, I mean, that was a huge deal for a lot of people, and not just for Karamo, but for his community, and that's what reality television is supposed to be about.
And
it's not supposed to, all this bullshit that you're seeing these days, this more stage stuff and people coming in with an agenda. It used to not be like that, Mike, at all.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, MJ, because all the old school guests that I've recently had on, we always talk about the contrasts and how the genre is just, I would consider the genre dead at this point in terms of the word reality. I think now reality TV is basically just a name more than it is a meaning at this point. I think nowadays, you'll probably see people who are already established just coming on to kind of, milk their followers or their brands and stuff, whereas like the real conversations don't really exist anymore. I mean, that's just kind of my take on the situation, but.
Well, and, I've been fortunate since coming back that I've been doing shows with people that were cut from the same cloth as me, that we came up through that same experience, and it's been refreshing. On All Stars 3, there might have been a little bit of that, but of people coming in with some agendas, which you'll see here and pretty soon. But overall, yeah, it would be very hard for me to deal with somebody who is just trying to stir shit up just to stir it up. I mean, it's naturally going to happen whenever you have very strong personalities inside a house and you have this pressure cooker of emotions and stress and doubt and insecurity and just pure adrenaline, really, because you're always worried about. So I don't care what anybody says. Everybody in these houses are wigging out whenever you're in the chat. I don't care who it is. Everybody's on edge. Even if they look like they're cool and it's not affecting them, everybody's a mess, okay? And so I can deal with that type of stuff and natural stress that comes out of people, but somebody just coming in and
Yeah. One of the most realist scenes that I think you'll ever see on reality TV, since we were just talking about Karamo, and I was watching this yesterday actually, was the whole scene at the club when I think the cops surrounded him or something like that. And then you two were having this conversation, but I would say like out of most people that were on your season, you were probably the one that kind of felt like the culture shock the most, because you were coming from like a background where you weren't exposed to like all the different walks of life yet that some of your other castmates had gone through. So for you to see that, it was almost like you genuinely like this was all foreign to you, even to where Karamo is on a different wavelength than you, and to see that was just such a raw moment.
Dude, it gives me goosebumps, and you
Yeah,
see it on there.
wow.
Even thinking about that moment, because cut to just the past, I don't want to put years, a certain number of years to it, but all of the things that we're seeing that have happened to people being profiled. And dude, that moment right there that you're talking about is a great example of how a lot of people in our society are just dumb to it, like I was. I mean, I was a totally different person then. I didn't even, in my mind, I didn't even think that they would possibly be doing this to Karamo because he was a black guy. In my mind at the time, it was like, oh, well, we got cameras around us and somebody just called in a freaking prank. And it could have happened to Karamo. It could have happened to me. It could have happened to Willie. It could have happened to Sarah, Shavonna. It could have happened to anybody. But really, it wasn't like that. Like, I mean, he was racially profiled in that moment. but I was ignorant to it, and I hope people can learn from that. I know I sure as hell learned from it. I just recently went back and watched the entire season myself, and I hadn't watched all the episodes in years and years, and that was tough for me to watch, man. Even though I thought I was helping him, being like, dude, Karamo, just get away from it. Why are you making a fucking scene? I really thought I was helping him. And you see me even after we're back, like, dude, like, talk to me, let's make up. But he was irate, and rightfully so, because I didn't understand. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I almost wish that people will go back and watch that scene, because it's a powerful scene.
For sure. Would you say that you came out of this experience having like a better understanding of yourself in a way?
Oh God.
Loaded question, right?
Yeah. Are you kidding me? Like, I was the perfect person to put on it. Like, I mean, I don't have a racist bone in my body, or I don't judge or anything like that, but you just don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? And it's a lot of times it's nobody's fault if you're brought up in a more sheltered environment. But that show for me helped me to just get out and get outside of my comfort zone, get out of my little freaking bubble, and it forces you to open your eyes. But that's where it gives somebody like me. I hate using this term. I really hate using it, but it's a real term that, I mean, it just is what it is. I have a platform to talk about it, and there's a lot of people that will listen to what I have to say, and maybe were similar to me. And I think that I have made an impact on these colleges and universities that I used to speak to, and to this day, the way that I conduct myself and carry myself.
Mm. How did you maybe feel about how your story on your real world was, I guess, depicted? Because we kind of saw bits and pieces of you. We just kind of basically got a little of the basis, right? Was, you were a former athlete, and then we just saw, obviously, kind of like your party moments. Do you feel like there was more to you that wasn't shown, or at that time was kind of accurate?
There was definitely more to me. I think that if you really want to know, Mike, I don't think I've ever shared this on a public deal or like a podcast or in any media, but this could totally be wrong, but what I think they were really trying to play up on, or were wanting to play up on, was how devastated I was that football was no longer a part of my life. So we worked for the Philadelphia Soul, which was the Arena League football
Yeah.
team. All right, Bon Jovi was our
Bon
boss and
Jovi.
all that shit. Yeah, man. But by the time we moved to Philadelphia, their season was already underway. Okay, and the only reason that happened is filming got pushed back several months. Okay, because they were having a fight with the local union there on building the set, or whatever. They weren't using their people into, and so it all got pushed back. What I think that they ultimately wanted to have happen was for us to come in, and then me have the opportunity to try out for the team and to play for the Philadelphia Soul. I truly, truly believe that, and trying to play, because I would have done it in a freaking heartbeat to be able to play more, because and they really didn't show the moments that I had that were very emotional, about me just feeling kind of like a piece of shit out on the field, throwing t-shirts up into the stands. And it's kind of like, dude, this is what I'm doing now. Like, I was the one out here catching touchdown passes and, with the dudes, and all. Now I'm like trying to get the fans excited. Like, it was a very humbling moment for me. So I don't think they really followed that very much. I was also going through a lot of personal stuff with my parents at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't. The production company and MTV probably wasn't too happy about this, but I kept that very close to my chest. I talked about it a lot during my casting, because it was such a raw and deal for me at the time. But then whenever I went on the show, kind of told myself, this is what I'm doing. I don't need to bring in anybody else in my family. And to this day, I kind of regret in some ways not sharing some of that stuff because number one, I think that there's a lot of people out there that could have resonated with me, but also maybe it would have put a little pressure on some of my family members to get their acts together, you know. But I don't know. I'm never going to throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah.
But I feel like they depicted me well. I mean, I don't. I'm not ashamed of anything that I did on the show. I'm not. I'm never going to be one of these people that says, well, you know, they tried to make me look like I was somebody that I truly was. Normally, the people that are saying that, Mike, are the ones that mess up and do something bad, and then they try to flip it and say, well, no.
Well, if you say something, you say something. Like, you can't kind of.
Dude,
Yeah.
a video camera is not going to lie. Now, they can add music to it, and they can maybe
Change
splice.
the order.
Yeah, you and I can get in an argument on a Monday and get over it on Tuesday, and then maybe it flares back up when we're drinking on Friday, and they kind of pull Monday and Friday together and can make it just because they have to. I mean, you're making a television show, and
Yeah.
people are only seeing less than 0.1% of the footage that's there, so they have to somehow piece it all together. And it's not like they have a camera just in your face the entire time to catch every word that you say.
That must have been. One thing I did notice that I don't know if I've really pinpointed this on other Real World seasons. They had like cameras, what felt like everywhere in your house. There were so many scenes of you and Landon in the shower, and then you've got like the freaking like I don't know if you've seen it in the NFL. They have like the pylon cams now. That's essentially what they had. It's like they put a fucking camera in the fucking faucet or something.
Dude. Yes, it seemed like it, man. The only in that house, the only area that they did not have a camera was in the actual, like, where the toilets were at. There were 2 toilets, and there was a door that you opened up, and it was a tiny little room. Like, if I had to, do number 2, pinch a loaf, whatever you want to say, I would sit in there, my knees almost touched the door. It was like the smallest little room ever, but there were no cameras there. But yeah, they were everywhere else in that community bathroom. And there was also one other place. This is pretty funny. Probably going to regret talking about this, but they also didn't have a camera in our closet. Okay, and Landon and I had this pretty big closet because all of his stuff, all of my stuff. And there was one night whenever we had gone out, and I decided I came back and went in the closet with, someone and kind of leaned up against the door so production couldn't come into the closet. And what was so funny is that, I kid you not, Mike, the next day they had a camera inside our closet.
No shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But, the whole camera thing, I don't know what everybody else says about it. But it takes about 2 days to get used to those cameras being on you. It even kind of caught me off guard a little bit coming back for All Stars 2. We get off the airplane, we're sitting on the bus, and all of a sudden the camera comes in the bus, and they're not even really filming for the show, but they're just there to maybe pick up some B-roll or to see how we're all interacting with each other. And it was just kind of like, like it was just there again, but then it fades away. Then it just becomes, it's weird when it's not there. And that's what I tell people, filming the Real World, it was harder coming out of that experience and not having the camera than it was coming into it, because it becomes your family. Like, you develop these relationships with production and especially the camera guys, because we can't talk to them. They can't talk to you. So you have this very unique relationship, this unspoken relationship with them, where there's a respect there, and you feel like you get to know who that person is. We could be totally wrong, but man, that's I respect what they do for sure.
I mean, you're usually not supposed to speak to them. David Burns from Seattle, I don't know if you know him. He actually had a relationship on the show with one of the I think camera people or producers. I feel like I think it
Yeah.
was.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Then they both got kicked off, right?
Yeah. Or yeah. Well, I think the camera person got fired
Yeah.
on the
Well,
show.
that's in our contract. I mean, you're not supposed to have any type of relationship with anybody there. And now, back in the day, I think they would just kind of threaten to kick you off the show. But now, dude, they're fining people all kinds of money. And like if you break that barrier, that you get fined. If you go and try to have a conversation off camera, you get fined like legit money for if you try to sneak a cell phone into the house. I mean, people are getting fined. I don't want to put numbers out there, but enough that you would be like, oh my God.
Especially back in the day too. Let's just say like around the time of the 2 gauntlets that you did, probably even the duel too. The appearance fees were probably not even like nowhere near what they are now. So it was getting docked out of your pay a little bit if you would make a slight infraction.
Well, back then, I mean, I was never docked any pay, but it wouldn't take much, and they would take your whole paycheck away. I mean, back in the day, just to do the real world, I mean, you didn't even make enough to buy
An
shit, man.
iPhone.
Yeah, right, an iPhone. Um, so, anyways, but I think that they should pay folks more because you're putting your life out there, you know. But the
Yeah.
problem is there's so many people that would come in and would pay money to be on the show.
Oh
They
yeah.
would pay production to let you be. So I get it.
What about yours and Landon's dynamic? Because I think the show tried to make you guys seem like the tag team partners of the world, right? Like you guys
Mm-hmm.
had the matching tattoos, the curly hair. Was that like a real thing, did you feel like, or was that something that like the show kind of heightened in a sense?
Landon and I had we had a good relationship. I mean, we obviously coming into the house, we had the most in common with each other because coming from our backgrounds, but we were both kind of at different places in our lives whenever we came in. Uh, this is going to sound really weird when I say this, but it won't sound weird. It is what it is. Landon and I both are like really sensitive dudes. All right.
Hmm.
But we kind of have these tough shells on us, and he's a phenomenal athlete. I feel like I was a good athlete, and people would just kind of view us as, but we were both emotional. Hell, that's why we were on the show. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? If we were just all brawn and no heart and
Yeah.
soul, then it wouldn't have come off. So we definitely had some moments where I think we're like some emotional moments. Like there was a while where there was a little tension between us, and Mike, to this day, I can't even tell you what it was. I think it was whenever I had a buddy that came in to visit. I don't know if whenever you rewatched, if you saw he was a 7 foot black guy that I grew up with, David Harrison. He played for while I was on the show, he had just been drafted by the Indiana Pacers, and he
Wow.
came to visit. And I think David had said something to Landon like, "Yeah, MJ is." You're just kind of seeing a watered down version of him on the show because David knew all about kind of some of the personal stuff I was going through with some family members, and he knew about this breakup that I had had at the time with the girl. He really knew about how when the NFL didn't work out, how it was crushing me, and I didn't share it as much with Landon, who I thought I would have, and I think that kind of rubbed Landon the wrong way to where he thought that maybe I wasn't who I was acting like I was, and that might have created some tension there. But you know, uh, I've got so much respect for Landon.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to for him to get his ass back on one of these shows to where we could be on the same. Do you imagine if we could be on the same team together, Mike, and go
Hey,
out and
if
compete?
they ever do a battle of the seasons type of format, Real World Philly might clean up the
Dude,
yeah, clean up.
it would be fucking amazing. So I'm hoping that he's watching these shows and seeing what's going on. I just need to give him a call. We stayed somewhat in contact, but not nearly as close as I'd like us to be. But we all grow up and move on with our lives and have different
Yeah.
interests.
He's kind of someone who's kind of, it seems like he's kind of past the show in a way. Like he did his time in the sun, but now he's kind of settled down and stuff. And like I don't know, I think it would have to be like a situation would have to be perfect, or the stars would have to align for him to.
Well, it'll be interesting. I don't know if he wants to do the challenges anymore or what, but they're doing all these homecoming shows now,
I could see him doing that. Yeah.
and it's he wouldn't have to risk coming back, and if he doesn't win a challenge, then kind of losing his king of the challenge world. But let me just put it this way, Mike. If they call us to do one of these homecoming shows, it will happen. And the person that I didn't think that we could get to come back to do it would be Karamo, but he's 100% on board to do it. So I can see that happening.
You think everybody would co-sign?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I really do. I mean, I think it would come down to probably Landon if he would want to do it. But I mean, you're only filming for like 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
So these things are not, like the challenge now to do All Stars. It's not near as long as the flagship show, but if you stay to the very end and win that motherfucker, you're there for almost a little over a month and a half or so, which is a long time whenever you're our age and got careers and families, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Could you ever see yourself doing the flagship if it were to cross your path?
There's no doubt.
Really?
There's no doubt in my mind. I'm coming off an injury right now. I had my ACL totally reconstructed in January, so I've been going through physical therapy and doing all of that. But by the end of this year, by December, I'm going to be 100% back. So, yeah, I'll just put it this way: there's some exciting stuff coming up.
That's true. That's a good place to. What was Philadelphia like? Because I've seen and I've heard, because when I was talking to Kahutta, they obviously had his season in Australia, which is like a very different wavelength than like a Philadelphia, where it's like, all right, everybody knows the whole song and dance here. Were you guys getting like a hard time in Philadelphia?
I think you know the answer to this question, Mike, if you watched the show at all.
I saw a stool was thrown at you, was one thing that stood out. Wasn't there was a bar fight too? Someone got like glass in their back, I remember seeing.
Yeah, it was a guy that we were with. But before I answer that, what about, don't you love Kahutta?
Oh, that guy's phenomenal. He's one of those guys, like, if you could just listen to him talk, that would be like, yeah, my job's...
Dude, he's the best, man. I just got to throw him out some props, man. My first time to meet Kahutta was filming All Stars 2, and they really didn't show it that much, but we were inseparable. Like, we were together the entire time. Like, I'm like, yeah, I can just sit there and listen. And I am a Southern guy, but that motherfucker is real Southern. Listening to him talk.
I still laugh on All Stars too. After, I think it might have been like the second episode, you guys were the two names up for deliberation, and then like you're not even mad about it. You just turn to him and you're like, "Country boys."
Well, I kind of knew that he was going to be voted in, so I think I was a little bit more lax.
Oh man!
But to answer your question on Philly, and let me preface this by saying, by no means with what I'm saying right now am I trying to say that all of Philly is bad or I don't like Philly. I think there's some stuff online where it looks like people said I hated Philly, which I don't ever remember even saying that. I think it's one of those deals where it kind of got taken out of context. But, dude, from the moment that we got to Philadelphia, we had a hard time. Our house was in Old City in a great area, a great location, but there was a Starbucks, Mike, that was right across from our house, okay? And the way that it worked is the windows in our room, we could open up and literally like sit out there and catcall or just feel the energy from the city. And sometimes it was great, there's people yelling, "Oh, we love the real world," and there's all that kind of stuff. But more often than not, As soon as we walked out of there, people would almost post up at that Starbucks right across, because it gave them a reason to come down there. And it was not good. It was get out of our city, real world sucks. I mean, we would have stuff thrown at us at times. You only saw like a select few events that happened where it was in close quarters, but just walking up and down the streets was tough, man. The people did not like seeing the cameras, and they immediately think, "Oh, look at these douchebags,"
Yeah.
type thing. And it really kept us from getting out, or I'll speak for myself. It kept me from getting out and exploring the city as much as I wanted to. Like, we kind of just stayed in a centralized area. Because I even think a lot of the bars and stuff didn't sign off to have us come in there, because that's the thing that people don't understand. In order to go places, the actual businesses have to sign release forms saying that they're okay with us coming in, and then the people that are there in the bar, if they're caught on camera, they have to sign. Like, it's a whole freaking thing. And I don't know how it is with other seasons, but there's a lot of places we just couldn't go because they didn't want us to come in. But yeah, there was the one night that Landon and I went out just to have a few drinks before something. And I go in, we sit down, they put the little light in the middle of the table. Landon gets up to go get us a couple beers. I'm sitting there, and then I can remember this like it was yesterday. I see like some energy coming from this direction right here. And all of a sudden it's a dude, he's holding a bar stool and just launches it at me. I kind of deflect it. Thank God I hadn't started drinking yet. It would probably just hit me right in my phone. But kind of deflect it. And then I go to jump up. This was probably about a month into filming. I go to like jump up, natural reaction. You're trying to protect yourself. And also I was thinking about Landon, what's happening to him, because he went in that direction. And that was the first time, Mike, that I realized we had security around us, because that dude that threw that stool, he just went from here to shoo, gone. They yanked his ass out of there so fast. And that's how security that's how they worked with us in that city, maybe in every city, is if we provoked it with somebody, like if I went in and I threw a bar stool at somebody, then let the camera roll. We would have to, whatever, if a fight happened, then a fight happened. But if somebody's trying to hurt us for no reason, then there was security there to take care of them. And there's probably no telling how many times they had to do stuff like that we didn't even know about.
That's just crazy. Like, I can't even believe people would actually bring themselves to doing something like that.
Dude, you say that, but I'm sure you've been out. If people, they get enough to drink in them, and maybe, we're getting a lot of attention, and we're not trying to do anything bad, but it just those cameras naturally bring obviously a lot more attention to you, and people get pissed off. I mean, you and I wouldn't do it, but there's people out there that do.
So you make your debut on Gauntlet 2, which is one of my favorite seasons, might I add. Great cast. Guys are seen having parties and fun times. Like, I think that's something that lacks these days, Yeah. Kind of maybe the more the direction now is more sport than reality, I would say. And obviously you're a former athlete, so like what do you make of that? Do you like that it's taken the direction as a sport, or you feel like there should be a 50-50 balance?
Dude, I love that it's taking on more of a sport. It's that was more refreshing to me, because you take like the Gauntlet 2, for example. We had an absolute blast. Don't get me wrong, bro. Like, it was a different time back then, Mike. We would go to the eliminations. Well, first off, it was unlimited alcohol. So like, it was just, and I'm sure you've heard this and other people that you've interviewed, like they were wanting to get us riled up, and we were drinking any night that we wanted to drink. We could drink, if you wanted to take a squirt bottle of vodka and
onto a challenge,
you could. And then in these eliminations, if you weren't competing in there, we were all sitting back, like drinking as we were watching, and it just kept you kind of riled up, which is probably good for TV in that sense. But in the nature of the sport and doing it, just it wasn't so. But cut to now, I mean, it's much more limited for sure. It's kind of weird as a 42-year-old dude.
It's like
two
the
kids
opposite, right?
yeah,
It's the opposite.
it's kind of like they're coming up and they're saying, well, let's tonight we're not going to allow you guys to have any alcohol, and well, it's Saturday, we're going to give you 3 drinks, and then maybe later on we'll give you some more. So I mean, that was also kind of weird too, coming back to All Stars, because they really try to limit the most, but most people there know how to partake, and it's a little different than back then. But yeah, man, it was a different world for sure. But I like the way it is now. I mean, I think that the fans are truly seeing that too. Like, people are following, like, doing stats, and like it's blowing my mind. I'll have stuff come across my Instagram and stuff like that where, like, people have broken down how much money I've won, and all of how often I'm doing a confessional, and how much airtime. Like, people are really into this shit. It's awesome.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Well, you tell me about some of this. I mean, what's some stuff that you've seen out there? Like, are they?
Oh, everything that you just stated is exactly what I'm seeing. Like, this isn't stuff that would ever like cross anybody's mind back in the day. Like, nobody would think. Like, I'm sure not even you. You're not probably on a show like, I wonder once I get off this, who's gonna have my calculations of how many confessionals I've given, how much money I've won. Like, that's probably nothing that crossed anybody's mind. Like, 15 years prior to this, 20 years prior to this, So, but that's all comes back to the social media aspect of things.
Well, and I think that the show got a boost because I can't remember his name off the top of my head. You'll probably know the guy from Sports Center that said that the challenge is becoming like the 5th.
Orlovsky,
and then there's another guy that said that the challenge is literally becoming America's 5th sport or something like that. One of these other guys, Bill Simmons. Yeah. So, and I think he's right, man. I mean, people are taking this serious, Mike. I mean, when I say people, I'm talking about the challengers that are coming in and wanting to be in shape and training the right way. I don't really watch the flagship show as much. I've started kind of going back and seeing it because I have a feeling I'm going to be competing against some of these young bucks, and I want to get to know their stories. And I mean, these dudes and males and females are in great shape, bro. And right now, nobody's regulating if they're taking performance enhancing stuff. That's the first thing I'm looking at. Like, what's this dude taking, bro?
Yeah. That's another thing I like to ask OG guests too around that time frame when you were on your original stint. Was the challenge during like the Gauntlet 2 to Duel 2 era, was that something you seriously had to train for, or were people kind of more so focused on the aesthetic aspect of it?
Aesthetic. And I can only speak for myself. Like, those first challenges that I did, man, I didn't train for any of that. Like, it was more, hey, we're going to go, and the finals were not near as hard back then.
No.
Hell, the Gauntlet 2, I didn't even run in the final. It was like the easiest day that I had while I was there. Like,
what happened there again? Because I've heard some stories about like people seeing the final the night before and they had to switch it up. Were you one of those people that saw it?
Yeah, man. So rumor has it, I don't think any of us have the real story, but rumor has it that, because that was in Trinidad and Tobago, that at that time the sea turtles were nesting, and I think that they had the final challenge to be ran along the beach, and it had like this real big like beach atmosphere thing where you were going to be putting in, and the government stopped production from doing that because the sea turtles were about to like hatch the next day or something weird. So they had to change it all up. And, it turned into like this eating contest, and then you had to bet money and booty or whatever it was. It was, I'll be straight up, dude. It was so dumb. It was so dumb. Our three best athletes didn't even compete in it.
You, Alton, and Landon.
Landon, and we just sat there and watched everybody. Hey, it's great. We won, but I did not enjoy that victory near as much as All Stars 2, where I literally almost died, which you didn't really see, but it was bad.
Now, was that where your injury came from, All Stars 2, and carried over into 3, or you're not willing to let on?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say that much about it, but no, it did not happen in All Stars 2 at
Okay.
all. Yeah, it was not. It was. I'm going to kind of let that one play out for you a little bit,
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
yeah, but I was in bad shape, man. Like after that final was over with, because my body totally shut down about before we started phase 2, which there was all that controversy and all that bullshit. But the like I was cramping up like in my abdomen and my kidneys, and because we did the whole sleep deprivation the night before, they really didn't let us eat that much food at all that morning before we started, and we didn't eat anything that entire day. And what really saved me in that final was eating that bullshit
The
food,
gross stuff? Yeah.
the gross stuff, the goblet of blood that I could barely hold down. It was thrown up everywhere, and then the fish eyes, and
Well,
but it was giving me something in my body to be able to carry on.
in some weird way, it's almost like you did what you didn't get to do on Gauntlet 2 during the All Stars 2 with that eating thing then, right? Because
Double time,
you
yeah,
double the
man. I
time.
mean,
Yeah.
double the time. And dude, it's you. Whenever you're coming in to compete in all of these shows now, I don't care if it's the OG stuff with the All Stars or obviously with the flagship. If you're going, I don't care how good your political game is. If you are really coming in and want to win that show, you have to be in shape. Like
Hmm.
you can't. I hate when people say you skate your way through to the victory. You can't skate your way through to the victory because you have to go in and compete and have grit. And yeah, there's puzzles and stuff like that. But bro, we probably went 40 or 50 miles that day.
Wow.
But you don't see that. Like you can't see that because everything's kind of chopped up. But between the running and the jogging, the biking, it had to have been 40 to 50 miles. It was a long day. It was the best day of my life, though. It was amazing. Well, one of the best days of my life. It was
One
amazing.
of the best days, yeah. Bro, when you get the chance, you have to go on Paramount Plus and you have to go to season 34, 33 of the challenge, the flagship one, and watch that final. Because that's the one they call the hardest one in the history of the show. It was brutal, since we're talking about
What was it? Was it hot or cold?
hot. They were in like the desert or something like that.
Who won that season?
I think this guy Turbo won it from Survivor Turkey.
Turbo. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about this Turbo guy.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we were
What?
talking. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you got it.
Okay. No. Yeah, we were talking about the training aspect of the challenge and how like different it is now compared to back then.
Oh yeah.
But even back then, if there was a training element, they kept you on kind of like the hold list for the final 2 seasons that you did. So even if you wanted to train, it was almost like
Bro, it was bad. Like, because back then they didn't have alternates already
on site.
there
Yeah.
on site. So, for example, on it would have been the Gauntlet 3. I literally think Gauntlet 3. I was in Miami at the time. Whenever I got the call from them, I had been hosting an event. Was in a bad way. I think even when they called and they were like, "Hey, is there any way that we can get you to Mexico?" I think it was Puerto Vallarta or whatever. And they're like, "Can we get you here in tomorrow?" And I was like, "There's no way I can get there tomorrow, but I can possibly in 2 days." And they were like, "Well, just where do we need to fly you out?" I was like, "Well, I got to go home and pack and then tell my family." Like it was a whole thing. But I committed to doing it. So I fly back from Miami, get home. The next day I pack. I just try to like get my life together, and then flew out the following day and then show up, and then I'm literally competing like boom. So what I'm getting at is there's a physical aspect of it that back then it might not have been as much the physical, but there's an emotional and mental aspect of it that people don't really think about that haven't gone into it. Like you have to, at least for me, and I think a lot of the other challengers will attest to this, you got to get your mind right. And you got to, because when you go into that environment, it is, yeah, it's physical, but dude, just you have to be ready upstairs. And I'm not talking about playing the political game and trying to get all that figured out. Just to be in that environment, it's a pressure cooker, man. And when your head's constantly on a swivel, it wears on you. But yeah, I was not in shape at all for the Gauntlet 3. And then same thing was true for the Duel 2. Nehemiah and I got called after that fight between Adam and CT. And again, we were flown out within 2 days of receiving that call, having to fly halfway across the world. And then, bam, we finally get there after 30 some odd hours of traveling, and we compete the next day in that little rugby thing that we did. Like it was insane. I think I could have done a lot better on duel on the Duel 2. If I would have been there out the gate, I would have definitely made it to the final in that one. I don't think I was ready for the Gauntlet 3. I mean, I lost to Frank.
That, oh my god, the foreshadow of that was crazy because I think earlier that episode they cut to a confessional of you saying that Frank was a nerd. And then
Bro.
like the way that foreshadowed was crazy.
Bro.
But the contraptions that they put on you guys, people don't realize that this shit hurts. Because I had Naya on, and she had a similar situation where she had like nerve damage from a similar situation or elimination that you competed in Frank against.
Yeah, dude, that was my foot against Frank. Totally, fellas. But Frank, I mean, kudos to Frank. He beat me. He should have never beat me, but he outsmarted me in that because he knew that I was probably out of shape, and he let me just wear myself out as he just dropped all of his body weight down on the sand and let me
Dug a hole.
pull until I didn't have anything left in my foot because they put that around your ankle and it just cuts all of the blood off to your foot. But I haven't even talked to Frank since then, but I'm wondering if he felt the same thing I was. Like it was bad, bro. I didn't have like nerve damage or anything, but I was limping around forever. But yeah, that was a hell of a political game. That Gauntlet 3. That was a heck of a setup there for sure.
Had you made it out of that elimination, you might have won that season based on what happened in that final with Big Easy.
I think so. If I could have just gotten through that one right there, which whatever. See, now I'm starting to get riled up, bro. It could have totally changed my challenge stats for sure. But whatever, it's okay.
So this will be a last question for you now. Who, if you had to choose one person in the history of the show to go up against in like a elimination, who would be your guy that you would want to go toe to toe with?
Man, I have to just say it, dude. I think size wise, the person that I'm most similar to is Mark Long. I mean, he and I literally are the same human. We're both right at 6'3", 225, 230, kind of go up and down from that. So he and I would be a really good matchup. Who knows? He and I are about to be on a show together.
Could be.
Yeah, but somebody that I have always wanted to go against would have to be CT. It would have to be, because he's supposed to be the big bad dude, and his stats are great and does good. The John Banana guy, I would whip his ass, and I really don't have any beef with him. I just, he's the guy that is the big name and has all the wins, so you got to poke fun at him for sure. So let me just put that on the record here.
It's on
I got
record.
nothing against Johnny Bananas. He's great for the show and the brand, and has done a fantastic job. But no, I first met him whenever we did this big reunion show for all of the Real Worlds, where they flew us all out to LA, and I think his show had just aired. It was like an award show.
The Real World Bash.
The Real World Bash. Oh my God, that was a shit show. Oh my gosh, that was not smart for them to. I mean, they threw the host in before we ever even started. It was a whole deal. But I had met him then, and that's the only time I had met him. And he was just like real green and just like happy to be there and be around everybody. And it was, so it's been cool to see the success that he's had with the show. But I'd still whip his ass. I mean, I do mean that.
There's this other guy in the flagship, Fassi. I don't know if you've heard of him. I've seen a lot of people compare him to you.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know much. I don't really know much about him. I think he was a college football player. I do know that.
Tennessee, Chattanooga, I believe.
Yeah, he played at a lower level school, but he I don't know. He's not even on my radar, really. I mean, he's young. You always got to take age into account, but I just hope we get the opportunity to go against them. You know, I would love the opportunity for us OGs to truly, and not even trying to sling mud or build hype or anything like that, but for me personally, to be able to compete with the other OGs against some of these young bloods and the more new school kids, to see how it would play out and truly let us OGs work together to do it, and not try to pit us against one another to go on, but truly let us work as a team to beat them. And yeah, they can come up with some way where maybe the other team gets to pick who goes in and do all that. But I think it would be a great show. I do. And there's just there's a difference in the way that we play the game. And you can't, I'm telling you, man, the Mark Longs of the world, Darrell still got some gas in the tank.
CT clearly has some gas in the tank. He's won the last two.
Yeah, man. Like, there's a lot more to the game other than just being a physical specimen. But us OGs, we're still put together, my friend. I mean, I'm stronger now than I ever have been. You know, I mean, that's one of the great things about getting back into this world, is that you start training like a true athlete again. And that's what I did before going back to season 3. I mean, I almost look like a totally different person. And I'm excited to kind of see the show, to kind of see the difference between physically what I look like. Because I came back and they asked me to do season 3. Literally, I was flying back stateside from Mexico. I got the call before I even left Mexico saying, "Hey, we're going to be doing season 3. Would you be interested in doing it?" I'm like, "Sure." And so from that moment on, like, there was no downtime. I came back and started training like a pro athlete. So
it's a bug, man, for those guys that, you know, had once played in their prime, and then to kind of still be able to train as an athlete and be able to compete like one too is definitely something that is
it's cool.
Piques the interest.
Yeah, it's cool, bro, for sure. Well, Mike, this has been great, man. I appreciate you having me on. You're everything that everybody's been saying. You're very professional, very good at your job. Ask good questions. I appreciate that.
Thanks so much for giving me your time today. I look forward to putting this out. And for those that have tuned in, you could check MJ out again in 6 days on May 11th on Paramount+. MJ, thank you again, and I wish you the best of luck, sir.
I appreciate it, man. I'm sure we'll talk again.
All right. Peace out.